When Tupac dropped Hit 'Em Up, what was the vibe like at Bad Boy?
All we knew was that the places that we felt very comfortable being was not so comfortable anymore.
When I was 18, all that happened. Pac died, Gaddafi died, Fatal left the group, Machiavelli dropped, Biggie died. All that happened when I was 18 years old.
Yaki Gaddafi got shot, Hussein Fatal crashed, Johnny J fell, and now Young Noble is gone. One by one, the faces from Tupac's Hit 'Em Up vanished, as if marked by something unseen. Hit 'Em Up, that began as a fiery diss against Biggie and Bad Boy, now feels like a chilling prophecy.
When Fatal passed, I met up with Edie, and we talked about the effects of that tragic incident.
It's an unfortunate situation, man, because, it's all losses, man.
With the latest and most heartbreaking loss, we ask, was it just coincidence or a curse? This is the untold story behind Hit 'Em Up, a music video turned memorial. Chapter 1, Young Noble, The Last Outlaw Falls.
Outlaw's rapper Young Noble, best known as one of Tupac Shakur's closest collaborators, has been found dead in Atlanta.
On July 4th, 2025, the hip-hop world was dealt a crushing blow. Rufus Cooper III, better known by millions as Young Noble, passed away quietly at the age of 47. The news broke early that morning from Los Angeles, California, where Noble had been living in recent years. For die-hard fans of Tupac Shakur and the legendary group Outlaws, this wasn't just another tragic headline. It was the final chapter in a long and painful story. Now that circle was closed. Official statements from his family and representatives gave little away. There was no confirmed cause of death, no dramatic circumstances, no ongoing investigation, just silence and grief. Those who had known him for years, including collaborators, friends, and distant relatives, spoke of a different kind of struggle, a slow, quiet war happening behind closed doors. It wasn't about headlines or public scandals, it was about pain that stayed hidden, depression, survivor's guilt, and unresolved trauma. The kind of suffering that builds over time, especially when you've seen every one of your brothers die. Some were murdered, some passed suddenly, others slipped away under circumstances still debated in whispers. For Yaki Gaddafi, who was shot in 1996, to Hussein Fatal, lost in a car crash in 2015, from producer Johnny J, who died in jail in 2008, to the recent deaths of lesser-known Outlaws affiliates, each loss took a piece of Noble with it. In a 2019 interview recorded on a podcast in Atlanta, Young Noble let a chilling truth slip out. He said, "I ain't supposed to be the last one standing. This ain't how it was supposed to go." It wasn't a lyric, it was a confession, one spoken with a quiet voice and tired eyes. A man who had buried his mother not long before, and who had spent much of his adult life keeping the Outlaw's legacy alive. Through mixtapes, tribute albums, and interviews, he held the torch. But it came at a cost. And now with his passing, fans are left to reflect. Was it fate? Was it exhaustion? Or had the pressure of outliving everyone finally broken him? Either way, hip-hop lost more than just a rapper that day. It lost the last heartbeat of a crew that once stood beside Tupac, full of fire, fury, and loyalty. Now, only memories remain. Chapter 2, the video that became a graveyard.
When we got hit with Hit 'Em Up, I had to make the call to Biggie, and I said, we're not gonna respond. Somebody's gonna get hurt.
When Hit 'Em Up dropped in June 1996, it wasn't just a diss track, it was a declaration of war. Tupac Shakur aimed it directly at the Notorious B.I.G, Sean Puffy Combs, and Bad Boy Records, calling them out by name and daring them to respond. He didn't just throw shade, he threw fire, venom, and pure rage. The track became one of the most infamous and aggressive moments in hip-hop history. But behind the lyrics and in the now iconic video shot in Los Angeles stood several young men. They weren't just extras, they were Tupac's circle, his crew, his musical brothers. They were rapping, laughing, posturing beside him in scenes that looked like victory laps. Few realized that nearly every one of those faces would one day meet a tragic end. Let's break down the names, the lives, and the losses.
Breaking news just into CNN, Las Vegas police have arrested a suspect in connection with the 1996 drive-by shooting death of legendary rapper Tupac Shakur.
Tupac Shakur, the face of West Coast rap. On September 7, 1996, Tupac was shot 4 times in a drive-by shooting while riding down the Las Vegas Strip after a Mike Tyson fight. He was rushed to University Medical Center and died 6 days later on September 13th, at just 25 years old. His murder remains officially unsolved.
When Tupac passed away and we dealt with that blow, Gaddafi, in my opinion, was never the same after that. Tupac and Gaddafi's relationship was a special one.
He was visiting his girlfriend. She found him slumped on the hallway floor, said he'd made a joke as he answered the door.
Yaki Gaddafi, Yafeo Fula, Tupac's godbrother and founding member of the Outlaws, Gaddafi was the only person who claimed he could identify Tupac's shooter. Just 2 months after Pac's death, on November 10, 1996, Gaddafi was found shot in the head in the hallway of an apartment building in Orange, New Jersey. He was 19 years old. A fellow Outlaws affiliate later confessed to the shooting, claiming it was accidental. Hussein Fatal, Bruce Washington. Another original outlaw recruited by Gaddafi himself, Fatal delivered one of the most vicious verses on Hit 'Em Up. On July 10, 2015, he died in a violent car crash on Route 85 in Georgia. He was thrown from the vehicle during a high-speed accident. His girlfriend, who was driving under the influence, was later charged in connection to the crash. Johnny J. Jackson. He was the sonic mastermind behind Hit 'Em Up and a key force on Tupac's All Eyes on Me, the man who helped shape the Outlaw's signature sound. Johnny J wasn't just a producer, he was family to the crew. But in October 2008, while locked up in Los Angeles County Jail, tragedy struck. He fell from an upper tier and was later pronounced dead at just 39. But those who knew him best have never fully accepted that. Too many things didn't add up. Too many questions were left hanging in the air. Big Psych, Tyrus Himes. A longtime friend and collaborator of Tupac and one of the featured artists in the extended Outlaws family. Big Psych, who went by Mussolini, had battled years of health issues and depression. He was found dead at his home in Hawthorne, California on December 5, 2016 at 48 years old. The cause was reported as natural, but his decline had been visible for years. And now in July 2025, with the sudden passing of Young Noble, the final remaining major figure from that Hit 'Em Up video has left the world. Nearly every man who once stood in front of that camera, strong, loud, and fearless, is gone. What started as an anthem of power has turned into a visual obituary, a moment frozen in time that now plays more like a ghost reel. Chapter 3. The Curse or a Chain Reaction. So here's a question that haunts fans, conspiracy theorists, and hip-hop historians alike. Was the Hit 'Em Up music video cursed? Or did it simply capture a moment so explosive, so raw and volatile, that everyone involved had already stepped into a fire they couldn't escape? Released in June 1996, Hit 'Em Up was not just a diss track, it was a direct missile launched at the Notorious B.I.G., Sean Puffy Combs, and the entire Bad Boy Records empire. From the very first line, Tupac Shakur held nothing back. He opened with no metaphors, no coded language, just war, unfiltered and on camera.
You can come all the way up into that. Don't bang your head on the camera, but you can look inside if you rap.
In the music video, filmed on location in Los Angeles, Tupac was surrounded by the Outlaws, all wearing red bandanas, throwing up death row hand signs, and delivering their verses with venom. These weren't actors or background dancers. These were real people involved in a very real conflict. Many of them were young, in their teens or early 20s, swept up in something far bigger than music.
Looking back at it, I don't agree with Hit 'Em Up. I don't even like it now, because you know what I mean? We get older, we mature. As I'm Muslim now, 45 years old now, you know what I mean? I might not agree with the lyrics of Hit 'Em Up, but when we was young, at that time, it was something that we was pushing.
Standing next to Tupac in that visual declaration were men like Yaki Gaddafi, Hussein Fatal, Young Noble, Big Psych, and even producer Johnny J, who was often present on set. Their presence wasn't just symbolic, it was a public line in the sand, choosing a side, accepting the weight that came with it. So was it just coincidence that these men began dying one after another across the following decades? Tupac gunned down in Las Vegas just 3 months later, Gaddafi shot in New Jersey 2 months after that, Johnny J dead in a Los Angeles County jail cell in 2008, Fatal killed in a Georgia car crash in 2015, Big Psych found dead at home in Hawthorne, California in 2016, Young Noble, the last of the original Outlaws seen in that video, gone in July 2025. Theories exploded across the internet. Reddit threads dissected every frame of the video. YouTube channels released eerie breakdowns pointing to symbolism, hand gestures, even the color grading of the video. Some fans called it a curse, others claimed it was karma or the inevitable result of aligning with a chaotic force that was Death Row Records during the height of the East Coast-West Coast beef. There were whispers of sacrifices. People questioned if the video marked these men spiritually, as if stepping into that studio that day sealed a fate none of them could see coming. And while some dismissed those theories as wild, others looked at the growing list of names and asked, how much coincidence is too much? What remains undeniable is this: no one who stood beside Tupac in that video walked away untouched. Whether it was bullets, prison, grief, or guilt, every man who stepped into that frame paid a price. And for some, that's all the proof they need. Chapter 4: The Conspiracies They Died With. Let's go deeper, because this story is not just about a diss track. It's about what may have happened in the shadows behind studio walls, under smoky backroom deals, and inside whispered conversations that were never meant to be recorded. It's about betrayal, fear, and the kind of silence that only comes after something terrible has been done.
Like, some of the Outlaws, I think Napoleon from the Outlaws said it, and there was an overall understanding that there was a 10K bounty on death row chains. That came from Puffy.
One of the most explosive claims came from Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, a former Southside Crip from Compton who later turned government informant. In multiple interviews and in his published memoir, Keefe D. alleged that Sean Diddy Combs offered a $1 million bounty to have both Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight eliminated. This meeting allegedly took place in New York City sometime in late 1995 or early 1996, as tensions between the East and West Coast scenes were rapidly escalating. According to Keefe D., the money was supposed to be funneled through a man named Eric Von Zip Martin, a shadowy figure from Harlem, deeply connected to both the music industry and New York's criminal underworld.
So Puffy elected to, let's align ourselves with these street guys, with Zip. And then through Zip came Keefe.
Von Zip was said to be extremely close to Diddy and served as a street contact, someone who could handle things that corporate executives never wanted ties to their names. Keefe D claims it was Von Zip who handed him the gun that was later used in the shooting of Tupac on the night of September 7, 1996 in Las Vegas. He suggests that Tupac's murder wasn't personal, it was transactional, a move designed not out of rage but business. The logic was cold. Remove a problem, send a message, shift the balance of power.
And he tells Keefe D, man, I just need you to take care of this situation with Suge and Tupac.
Keefe, he's claiming that Puffy offered him $1 million to kill Suge or Tupac.
Both
or
of
both.
them, yeah.
But after the shooting, the entire situation unraveled. Von Zip allegedly vanished. The money never materialized. The deal, if it ever existed, was broken.
You guys never got any money?
Never.
For anything?
Nothing. Not even a pair of Sean John drawers.
Years later, Gene Deal, a former bodyguard for Diddy, spoke out in a series of interviews. He claimed to have seen a check from Jimmy Henchman, a notorious music executive with alleged ties to organized crime, disguised as a management fee passing through Blackground Records. According to Deal, the paper trail was deliberately convoluted. The check was supposedly tied to people involved in orchestrating violence, not music. He hinted that this was just one example of how the music industry quietly funded street-level operations under the guise of business.
Zip had a check in his right back pocket, and that check was for $1 million.
And then there's the haunting story of Yaki Gaddafi, Tupac's godbrother and a fellow member of the Outlaws. Gaddafi was the only person who publicly stated that he could identify the shooter in Las Vegas. He told law enforcement that he had seen the shooter's face and could recognize him again. That information should have been a breakthrough. Instead, 2 months later, on November 10, 1996, Gaddafi was found shot in the head in the hallway of an apartment building in Orange, New Jersey. The man who pulled the trigger, according to multiple reports, it was Roddy Beal, a cousin of Napoleon, another Outlaws member. Beal later claimed the shooting was accidental during a game of roughhousing. He was charged as a juvenile and served time, but some fans and insiders have never accepted that explanation. They point to the timing. Tupac gone, then Gaddafi, the witness, silenced. They believe this wasn't just coincidence or youthful recklessness. They believe it was a cleanup operation, one that quietly removed the people who knew too much. Online communities, from Reddit forums to hip-hop conspiracy channels, have dissected these events for years. Some argue the connections are too neat to ignore. They link the players, the money, the labels, and the silence that followed. They say the pattern looks more than tragedy, it looks like a design. In this version of the story, these men were not just unlucky, they were liabilities. And in an industry where careers are built on image and power, silencing someone has often been cheaper than defending them. Chapter 5: Young Noble's final years, carrying the ghosts. Through everything, the loss, the violence, the rumors, the silence, Young Noble remained standing. He was never the loudest member of the Outlaws, he didn't seek headlines or controversy, but he was always there, steady, loyal, a soldier in every sense of the word. After Tupac Shakur was killed in September 1996, most expected the Outlaws to fall apart. They were young, grieving, and leaderless, but Noble refused to let it end. In 1999, he joined with a group to release Still I Rise, a posthumous Tupac collaboration album that helped preserve the fire they had started. He played a critical role in keeping the movement alive. He continued working with his fellow Outlaws members, especially Idi Amin, forming a powerful creative partnership. In 2011, they released Perfect Timing, an album that touched on loyalty, loss, and resilience. Noble never had a major record deal or commercial machine behind him, but he stayed consistent. He dropped mixtapes, toured underground circuits, and always made time to speak to fans. He honored the legacy, even when the world stopped paying attention.
1996, and Gaddafi gets killed November 10th, 1996. So, I mean, it was like, you know, the album come out, I couldn't feel happy about it because Pac was gone, and then Gaddafi dies 5 days after the goddamn.
But behind the scenes, he was carrying something heavier than music. Friends and collaborators said Rufus Cooper III struggled quietly. In multiple interviews, Noble spoke candidly about the trauma of losing nearly every close friend he came up with. From Gaddafi in 1996 to Fatal in 2015, Johnny J in 2008, and Big Psych in 2016, the funerals never seemed to stop. Then came the death of his mother sometime in the early 2020s. That loss, according to those who knew him best, changed him. He began pulling back from the public eye, his social media posts became more cryptic, the once frequent motivational messages gave way to quieter reflections, photos with no captions, and spiritual quotes. His music too began to shift. The beat slowed down, the lyrics were more emotional. He spoke of pain, of peace, of letting go. There were fewer verses about enemies and more about healing. But healing, it seems, never fully came. On July 4th, 2025, Young Noble was found dead in his home in Los Angeles, California. There was no farewell post, no cryptic final tweet, just silence. The official statements from his family were brief. There were no confirmed cause of death released to the public, no police investigation, just a wave of heartbreak from fans, friends, and peers across the hip-hop world. For many, it felt like a final page of a long, tragic book. The last visible outlaw was gone. He had survived the wars, the beefs, the curses, the loss. He stayed loyal when others folded. He kept creating even when no one was watching. But the weight of everything, the grief, the trauma, the solitude, may have been too much for one man to carry alone. And so the outlaw story ends not with a bang, but with a long, painful silence. A silence that speaks louder than any diss track ever could. Chapter 6, The Survivors. Scars that don't fade. Only a few made it out.
When you got the news that Fatal died in the car accident, how'd you guys take it?
Idi Amin, the final voice of Hit 'Em Up, still active in music, gives interviews, keeps Pac's story alive, but the pain is visible. Napoleon, once a teenage recruit, now lives in Saudi Arabia, left the game, converted to Islam, speaks about peace, redemption, and the poison of the past. Castro, Tupac's cousin, quiet, consistent, still releasing music under Castroid beats. Never chased fame, just stayed true. These three men carry the memories, the trauma, the weight of an era that took nearly everything from them. Chapter 7. Was Hit 'Em Up worth it? So was it worth it? Hit 'Em Up redefined the diss track. It was raw, ruthless, revolutionary. It was hip-hop with no breaks, but it also lit a fuse that many say led directly to Tupac's death. Yet near the end, Tupac tried to pull back. He squashed the beef with Nas. He was planning One Nation, a unifying project between East and West. He wanted off death row. He wanted his own label, Machiavelli Records. He wanted peace. But by then, it was already too late. The bullet had already been loaded. The dominoes had started to fall. Final chapter. A message buried in blood. So what does it all mean? Why did everyone in the Hit 'Em Up video die? Some say it was just fate, others bad luck, but more and more fans believe it was a message, a warning that when you stand beside someone challenging billion-dollar empires, you become a target too. Young Noble's death wasn't just a tragic end, it was the closing chapter of a story written in blood. But even in death, they live on, through the music, the message, the myth, and the mystery that's still unraveling.